patients with wounds or injuries. Once the wound heals, pain remains in the damaged area. Another indication in recent years is with the so-called cluster headache. These patients have really bad headache in the forehead or the eyes area, particularly at night, and sometimes the medical treatment fails or the drug treatment fails, and so this type of techniques has to be resorted to. It is also used for ischemic pain peripherally, and also for the angina pectoris when other treatments fail. A new area, psychosurgery. It is basically used in two situations, but they are both in an evaluation stage. It is used with depression and with compulsive conditions or compulsive disorders. We have conducted studies on this particular area, CG25, following the Canadians' discovery and findings, and the results seem to be promising so far. With the obsessive compulsive patient, well, these patients sort of carry out rituals, compulsive rituals. They cannot help it. As you may see, some people in the street checking their mobiles constantly, to see if they have a call, or, it really becomes an obsession that conditions their lives, or someone who goes to the photocopier machine to take a copy and they could spend the whole morning there, because they think something's wrong. And this is really serious, a disorder. With these patients, neurostimulation techniques are being used at this moment in time. With epilepsy, the only surgical treatment of epilepsy is to remove the epileptic foci, but sometimes it cannot be removed, and so these implants are used. Three treatment modalities can be used with epilepsy, which we see here, the three types, or neurostimulation. Cortical stimulation. There are a number of papers, or patients who, after a trauma, have a very poor conscious level, and also in certain cases of obesity, by implanting these devices, the brain can be stimulated to treat obesity. What new fields are we to see in the near future? Well, this is a paper by the Toronto group. It is very interesting. By stimulating the fornix structure right in the center of the brain, in a patient induced memory aspects he was not aware of, or he could not remember. So could we use these techniques in trying to boost memory? Other surveys and studies have been conducted by this group and the Japanese group, stimulating rats. They noticed an increase in the proliferation of neural cells in certain areas of the brain, which are the memory areas of the brain. This group has made a lot of progress. We shall see in the coming years whether this could be a new field for treatment. This is related with the frequency you use, however, and so differences were not found in the control group. What challenges lie ahead of us in the field of neurostimulation? Well, we've been implanting electrodes since the 1960s, but we do not quite well know how they operate, or how there are, of course, scientific evidences, but there is also a high percentage of complications related to the hardware, there are cost implications, and these techniques require you to follow up the patient. They are really time-consuming follow-up-wise. Mechanisms of action, the new imaging techniques such as traditional MRI techniques, tomography scans, etc., could help us better identify CT scans, sorry, the points where we shall stimulate. We can do tests before and after stimulation and see what changes are induced and see what effects they bring along. And therefore, in this regard, with regard to action mechanisms, more research, more medical research is needed. Obviously, stimulation seems not to work equally in all situations. Some situations require lower frequencies or higher frequencies. For instance, with Parkinson's disease, we are probably inhibiting certain things because the electrodes we implant are located in a very active site, and so what we do is inhibit, and we can also make an arrhythmic stimulation become rhythmic. So what scientific evidences we have that support this, that this works? Well, there are no studies complying all requirements. There are prospective randomized studies, but they are not double-blind. Some of them do cover the sample, but they're very short series, or there are methodological issues too. Some stimulation techniques, when the patient works, when the stimulation works, the patient doesn't always knows if the stimulation is working, because he or she feels something. So it has subjective connotations, or studies are needed, further studies are needed. And a methodological problem, an important methodological problem, is the fact that we have few patients. We saw a lot of numbers in the previous presentation with cardiac condition, heart conditions, but fortunately the rate of disease in this case is not that high, and so it's difficult to collect large samples over a short period of time, and so you're forced to conduct multi-center studies. So few patients, short series, with published studies or already published studies. There's not a prospective randomized study, but with Parkinson's disease, this is a study in which patients were stopped stimulation, and then a neurologist evaluated the patient following some scales, and that neither the patient nor the doctor knew whether the stimulator was on. So here there might be some subjective element in the patient. The patient could be sort of biased once they knew stimulation was on or off. Significant differences were found in the evaluation scales. In the same study with the same patients, after 5 years, the effect was sustained over 5 years in the treatment of Parkinson's disease. With regard pain, the subject is far more complex, because pain has indeed an emotional, subjective component in patients, and that is very hard to evaluate. Based on publications with regard to spinal cord stimulation, in the evaluation of FBSS, in other words, patients who have been operated or due to backache and pain persists, there are studies, prospective randomized studies. This cannot be double-blind studies, obviously, because when stimulated, the patients do know when they are stimulated. Is in the stimulation of the motor cortex. In cases of complex pain or facial pain, the evidence level is weak, the positive evidence is weak, and with PNS or NRS, it is difficult to draw conclusions. this study by